Hello everyone, I am Nikhil Kadam, a student at XLRI Jamshedpur GM program. Today we have with us Mr. Sayan Chakrabarty, Chief Human Resource Officer at Vector Consulting Group, an XLRI Jamshedpur alumnus with over 13 years of HR leadership experience across Deloitte, Nomura and Franklin Templeton. Currently at Vector Consulting Group, he is driving talent strategy, scaling firm's team, shaping people practices and aligning with future workplace trends. Thank you so much, sir, for giving your time for this podcast.
Pleasure is all mine.
Could you walk us through your journey from early days at XLRI to your roles at various firms and currently as a CHRO at Vector Consulting Group?
Sure. So, one interesting thing about when I was in XLRI, mine was the last batch of PMIR. So, I happened to say PMIR to one of your batchmates today. They were like, what is that? So, it's personal management and industrial relations. Yeah. So, ours was the last batch of PMIR and then the program transition to HRM. Anyway, just a tidbit fact. So, I studied in XLRI, got a PPO in Deloitte, and that's how my HR journey started, right? And when I started my HR journey in Deloitte, I realized that I know very little about HR, right? So, and Deloitte happened to be a brilliant learning pad for me. I remember my first role was that of a HR generalist, and my manager used to be based out of Hyderabad, and I was shunted to Bangalore. Bangalore in those days for Deloitte used to be a smaller location, and I was told, go to Bangalore, handle fort, right? So literally baptism by fire, right? A lot of learning, a lot of things that I had to figure out on my own. So a brilliant learning experience. So that I did that role for about 1.5 years. There was an organization transformation in Deloitte post that, and I moved to the talent advisory team as part of that, right? As a talent analyst, I moved to a talent advisory team. Now the remit here was very interesting. The remit was that all people interactions were removed from us. We were told that your interaction needs to be only with the stakeholders, right? The leaders of business units. Even the person who sits next to you should not know that you are HR, right? So we were working on large scale talent problems and how to solve for those problems. So that was I would say it was a brilliant stint at Deloitte. From Deloitte, I moved to Nomura, which was my foray into financial services. And financial services, Nomura for me, for that matter, is very synonymous with Mumbai, right? Because a lot of hustle, a lot of hard work, but I think it's all worthwhile when you have a great team to work with. So that was Nomura for me. Insane amount of work we did in those 3.5 years. Lot of achievements that I still think of very fondly. And more fondly, I think of all the people that I worked with in those 3.5 years. Suppose that Franklin Templeton happened. So Franklin Templeton, I joined as a senior HRBP, right? For a few divisions of the asset management company. And in the 5 years that I was at Franklin, my portfolio expanded quite significantly, from handling a few divisions of the asset management company to handling all the divisions of the asset management company, to handling some divisions which were beyond the asset management company, right? So in the end, I ended up having stakeholders who were not even based out of the country. And Franklin in itself was a very global organization, right? So a lot of cross-geographical teams working on projects which were impacting Franklin across the world, right? Very, very matrixed organization. So one major learning was how do you navigate that lattice of networks and still get your work done. So that was Franklin for me. Brilliant 5 years. Role kept expanding continuously, and post that I took up this role of heading the people function for Vector Consulting from 2023. And again, I would say the problem statement, what attracted me the most, was extremely interesting here at Vector. So what I was told is that we want to lay the groundwork for policies and processes to take the organization to the next level of growth. But in every aspect, there must be win-win between the employee and the organization. And at the same time, we must keep the cultural ethos of the company intact, right? And the cultural ethos of the company is extremely, extremely unique, right? There's a question of unparalleled questioning. Okay, you can question anybody in the organization. Doesn't matter who you are. There's a ethos of asking why till you are really able to figure out the root cause. And this is the kind of ethos and culture that we want to preserve while building the groundwork for policies, frameworks, processes. So brilliant problem statement, doing a lot of exciting work, loving it.
So, looking back at your journey, what was the turning point throughout your career as a cheerleader?
Right. So, Nikhil, I would say there wasn't one turning point, right? What led me here were a series of decisions and small turning points that happened almost on a daily basis, right? So, what were some of those things? I think from a very early age, I have had the appetite to always ask for more, right? Ask for more work, ask for more responsibility, and then when you get it, you deliver excellence, right? That's how you build a brand for yourself in the organization, and that these incremental steps, they compound, and that's what has led me to where I am today.
That's really great. You have also spoken about designing people practices via first principles thinking. Could you explain what that means?
Right. So, this is a great question, Nikhil. First principles. Let me tell you what first principles is not first, right? So, what happens often is that we get into this paradigm of borrowing best practices, right? We find out that some company is doing this, some best practice, and people are talking about it, and we think, we can take it and put it into our own context. That's like taking a solution and force fitting it onto a problem, or you may not even have that problem to begin with, right? Which is very counterintuitive. That's one. I'll give you an example of this, right? We have, I'm part of multiple HR groups, and in one of the groups, a little while back, somebody asked a question to the group asking, for employees who are joining, do you have one offer letter, or do you have one offer letter and one appointment letter? And I'm cringing inside. I'm like, why? How does it matter what anybody else does? You figure out in your context whether you need one appointment letter or 10 appointment letters, right? Why do you want to know what everybody else is doing? It does not matter. But we get into this paradigm of, trying to understand what the world is doing. And, once you figure out this is the practice, okay, let me do this, right? That's very counterintuitive. So that's the premise. That's what first principle thinking is not, right? First principle thinking actually talks about looking at a problem and breaking it down to its core elements. Okay. And once you get to the root cause of a problem, right, then you start building out the solution, right? That's what first principle thinking is. I'll give you an example, right? So, one of the problems when I joined Vector Consulting was that we wanted to grow at a very rapid pace. Okay, but our middle management, which is the project manager layer, was limited, right? So we typically do one project per project manager, right? So unless we have more project managers, we cannot take more projects. And we had a good, very healthy supply of projects, but not enough supply of project managers, right? To add to this complexity, our project managers are all organic, right? So we teach our consultants and groom our consultants in a manner that we believe that this skill set is not easily available outside in the external market, right? So we believe in building these project managers organically, right? And we were hiring aggressively, yes. We were hiring from really good B schools, but there was a lead time of 4 to 5 years for somebody to join from campus and become a project manager, right? So how do you solve this problem? There's a lead time of 4 to 5 years, and every year, our rate of churning out project managers was just 2 to 3, right? So we cannot grow unless we accelerate the rate at which we are creating our own project managers, right? So that was the problem, right? So what we did, it was very easy at this point to jump to some answers. Okay, let's do this. This is what I did in my previous organization. Why don't we implement this policy and see? But we didn't do that, right? We spent a lot of time in trying to understand what is the root cause of this problem, right? So we understood that there are two things which are affecting this, right? Two major things. There are multiple aspects of it. One thing was that incentive of becoming a project manager. That in itself had a very large lead time, right? So because it takes you 4 to 5 years to become a project manager, the incentive that you get after becoming a project manager is very far out,
Yeah.
So somebody is thinking, "Arey, that's very far out. Let me not worry about it today." Right? That's one. Uh, and secondly, there was no immediate incentive or disincentive for in a particular given year or even less than a year for me to act upon my skills, right? And how do people become project managers? Let me also add this context. People become project managers by acquiring a certain amount of skills. Okay, so we've defined those skills. We've defined that these are the set of 20 skills that somebody needs to acquire to get to a project manager level. People were not acquiring those skills. Okay. Right? That was the challenge. And we figured out that the lead time of that incentive is very high, right? So then once we figured this out, then it's very easy to build that solution. Now the solution seems almost like common sense, right? What is the solution? We said we will do a couple of things. First thing we wanted to do is that we wanted to build a shorter timeline of incentives, right? How do you do that? We said skills, which is the currency on which people get promoted to project manager, should be the currency for every feedback, every appraisal, right? Nothing else. The central currency should be skills. Okay, that's the first thing, that you start actioning on skills for you to get top rating, for you to get best compensation, for you to get promoted. We are only talking one language, skills. Okay. Second is, we said, okay, 4 to 5 years seem like a long time. Can we create an interim layer, right? And not just an arbitrary layer, but we will put it at a junction where we feel that a person is almost ready to take on a project responsibility, right? So we defined that in terms of skill also, right? So that also cut down the lead time of that incentive to really kick in, right? And once we did this, we realized there's another thing we need to do, which is build enablers to this system, right? So we dedicated very senior people to mentor these resources so that their acceleration of skills is fast, right? We built training calendars, and every month we have a new training calendar just to address the gaps that we are identifying, right? So these are things we are doing proactively. And what is the result of this, right? The result was startling. So what we saw in a 6-month period after we implemented this is that the rate of skill closures and acquisitions, it's 3x'd from the same period last year. It's become 3 times, right? And the flow of project managers has significantly increased because of that, right? So this is an example of first principles thinking. You break down that problem into core elements. Then once you've identified the root cause, you solve for that root cause.
You also said that you love solutioning and help organizations achieve their goals. So can you describe your leadership style?
Okay. So I would say my leadership style, if I had to define, I believe in building independent, empowered teams of driven individuals, and then letting them do what they're best at, right? Once you identify those individuals, you help them understand the context and align them to what we are trying to achieve. You just allow them to perform, right? And of course, you're there to guide them, to remove obstacles for them, right? But apart from that, let them do what they're good at. Don't interfere, let them do. Give them as much exposure as possible.
And has your style evolved over the years as your experience has increased?
Right. I would like to think, Nikhil, that I have calmed down, right? Contrary to what some people may say, but I do believe that I have calmed down. And another evolution I would say is that I consciously take less stress now, right? Earlier, when I was younger, in the early parts of my career, I would be stressed out about multiple things, multiple priorities. I've realized now that at any given point in time, you can be stressed at about 1 to 2 things. Beyond that, it's just noise.
Sir, in our HRM course, our faculty said one sentence that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Right.
So, how do HR leaders play a role in ensuring that culture aligns with the business goals?
Okay. So think about it this way. See, what is culture? Let's start there. Okay. Culture is a set of norms, right? Which a set of people have agreed that this is okay, this is not okay, this is how you operate, this is how you don't operate, right? It's a unset set of rules. Okay. So when you're talking about an unset set of rules that is accepted by a group of people, right? There is a very strong influence that top management plays in it, right? Because what happens in organizations is that, when it's not written down, you will actually follow by example. You will see what your leader is doing, and you will set your boundaries accordingly. This is okay to do, this is not okay to do. The person who's reporting to you will do the same thing, right? This is okay to do, this is not okay to do. That is how culture gets established, right? So when it comes to culture, the top management is the place to change things or to establish things. Okay, when you relegate culture to transactions of HR doing policing or HR trying to take some intervention, these are very counter. You've lost the battle when that happens, right? So these conversations actually need to happen at the absolute top, right? The board, the management company of the company needs to be talking about culture as a priority. That's one, right? And when this body talks about culture and understands how important it is automatically aligned to business goals, right? Because these are the people who are setting the business goals as well, right? So culture cannot be a separate thing from business goals. It's part of your business goals. So that's the understanding which our HR leaders, and not just HR leaders, I would say culture is a shared responsibility of the entire management of the company, right? So that's the onus that all of us have.
Sir, you have also worked on complex areas like mergers and acquisition and outsourcing.
Yeah.
What role does HR play in ensuring such large-scale transactions occur properly and smoothly?
Right. Okay. Very interesting one. And I've handled a massive transition in one of my previous organizations. So the interesting thing about mergers and acquisitions and any kind of outsourcing for that matter is that there's a financial part to it, and then there's a people part to it. Okay. So the financial part to it, although it may seem very complex, ultimately if you put your mind to it and you do some hard work, you'll be able to figure it out, in black and white. The people part, there are no black and white answers, right? You are talking about two organizations, let's say merging, or one organization getting outsourced to a different organization, right? These two organizations almost certainly operate in different cultural contexts, different benefits, different pay, different designations, right? And to add to that complexity, these are human beings you're dealing with, right? So how do you ensure that you are again achieving a win-win, right? The organization, there is a goal that the organization wants to achieve, but at the same time, you don't want to shortchange any of the employees who are impacted by this transition, right? So how do you ensure that happens, so that it's the best possible outcome for everybody? That's one. And second, very important, is how do you take people along on this journey, right? Because when it's about human beings, and we're talking about such a massive change in their lives, you need to communicate and communicate and communicate even more, right? You need to over communicate, right? So that is what I would say. HR plays an extremely key role. In fact, my experiences, in this transition that we were handling, okay, there was a business part, there was a financial part. Those things are, of course, HR does not get involved in that as much. But the people part of it is completely driven by HR, right? And trust me, when I'm talking about the people part, the business leaders and the CEOs of these organizations are also highly involved in that, right? So you have to take buy-in and take everybody along on that journey. So it's a very, very crucial role and very central role that HR has to play in these transitions.
You have also spoken about toxic work culture, where technical skills are rewarded but human skills are overlooked. So how do organizations practically embed an evaluation criteria where human skills are also accounted for during appraisals and promotion cycles?
Right. So it starts with, firstly, an acknowledgement at the top body that this is important, right? That's where it starts. Once it starts, the second step is you define what are these skills you're talking about, right? What are these different skills, right? You can't just arbitrarily say human skills or people skills. You need to define what they are. Third is you need to figure out what do you want the impact of not having these skills to be. Okay. What it means is that you can say that if somebody does not have these set of skills, this person cannot proceed beyond this level. Because the honest truth is nobody wants extremely good technical executors to become people managers.
Yeah.
They are very good at technical execution, right? You would ideally want them to become super specialists, right? By making them people managers, it's a lose-lose. The organization loses, the team members lose, and this person also is probably not happy, right? So first thing you need to define, if people want to move into that people management trajectory, is that at which point, what are the skills which are an absolute non-negotiable to have, okay? And what happens if you don't have those skills, right? Third thing to figure out is that how do you evaluate for these skills, right? And the answers are out there. It's very simple. You can have there are multiple answers. I name a couple. You can have 360-degree feedbacks. You can have assessment centers, and you can figure out whether people have these skills and to what extent people have these skills, right? And fourth thing, extremely important, is that once you figure out that these are non-negotiables, right, and you've also built a impact of not having that skill and assessing that skill. Fourth is how do you build enablers? How do you help people to acquire those skills, right? This is the journey that people have to travel. Organizations have to travel.
Sir, how should leaders adapt their management style to engage such multi-generation workforce, since there are people coming from different generations in the workforce?
Right. Especially talking about Gen Zs, right? Now there's so much talk about Gen Zs and how different Gen Zs. Are you a Gen Z?
No.
You're not a Gen Z. Okay. You're almost proud you're not a Gen Z. Which is, just kidding. So, see, I'll tell you my view on this is that when you're talking about such a large mass of people, amount of people, like one generation, okay, reducing that entire generation to a single stereotype has seriously limiting consequences. Okay, I don't think it is the right approach. In such a large generation of people, imagine, your batchmates, many of them might be Gen Zs, right? Are all of them similar? Yeah. I don't think so. If you go and ask them, they'll say they are not similar, right? Why? Because there will always exist a spectrum, right? A spectrum of what is, how a certain individual is, what kind of culture he or she aligns to, what does this person believe gives meaning to his or her own life, what kind of work this person wants to do, etc., right? So there will be a spectrum, right? Similarly, when you're talking about organizations, right, and organization cultures, there's going to be a spectrum, right? So the trick now is, where's the win-win? The win-win is for the right kind of organization culture. That right organization has to find the right person who aligns to that organizational culture, right? It isn't about, I don't think it's about having a culture which is a mishmash and accommodates everybody, right? It is about saying that this is my culture, and in that spectrum there are people who align to that particular culture. Right, and same thing applies on the other way around as well. That employees also need to identify that is this a culture that I'm going to be thriving at. Right? So that's in my opinion, that's how you deal with it, not by having a mishmash of different cultures.
Sir, in your interview with The Week, you have spoken about students syndrome, where many MBA graduates fall into focusing mainly on exams, deadlines, and CV points. And then when they go back to organization, they find it difficult to transition into that life. So what suggestion you can make?
Right. Okay. So I can mention 2-3 things which people can do. One is shift from thinking of scores and move to learning, right? Not all learning needs to result in some kind of score or output or result. Move to learning, move to a learning mindset, right? That's one, right? Second, I would say self-awareness and introspection, right? It goes a long way, right? When people start thinking about where are my gaps, right? What do I need to do better, right? A lot of times that self-introspection really helps, right? Third is start taking decisions in gray areas, right? Often what I've seen in people who are fresh out of college, right, we are looking for a lot of very clean answers, right? Give me in black and white. If I do this, will I get that? If this happens, then will this be the outcome, right? Give me what I have to do, I will do it, right? Start getting comfortable in environments where there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of uncertainty, okay? And there's a challenge which has been thrown on the table and nobody's even asked you to pick it up, and you say, let me figure it out, right? So that's the third thing I would say. And fourth, I would say, is that tap into your local ecosystem. What is that local ecosystem? That local ecosystem is your seniors, is your, let's say, your team manager or project manager, right? They will help you identify a lot of blind spots that you are yourself not aware of, right? And once you identify that, find the right guide who can help you navigate these challenges, right? So 4 points, just to recap. One is about introspection. Second is about moving to a learning mindset. Third is finding the right guy and the local ecosystem. And fourth is dealing with the uncertain and gray areas, right? So if people start doing this, battle is won.
So since you have more than a decade of experience, how do you compare our workforce expectations last decade and current expectations?
Okay, I'll keep this short. In the a decade back, nobody expected work from home.
Yeah.
That's a major expectation shift that has happened, right? Especially with post-COVID, more and more. We do have people asking us, even in interviews, do you offer hybrid? And we are happy to receive those questions. And we are happy to engage in those conversations to explain why remote working is actually detrimental in many cases, right? So I would say, yeah, that's the main expectation mismatch which has come.
Yeah. Sir, we are almost at the end of the podcast. So we'll just have a quick rapid fire round.
Okay.
Sir, can you name one book that shaped your thinking?
Okay, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand.
Okay, nice. One advice that you would like to give to your younger self?
Stress kam le.
One leadership mantra that you live by?
Okay, so I believe the person can make a massive difference, right? A driven individual can actually bring about quantum differences in output. So the person, in my opinion, makes a huge difference.
What's the best career advice that you have ever received?
Okay, so one career advice I received is that adult learning happens when you are uncomfortable, right? Why? Because the process of shedding old behaviors and imbibing new ones inherently is a uncomfortable feeling and behavior. If you're comfortable, you're probably not learning.
Sir, to close this podcast, what advice you would like to give to MBA students who want to make an impact in consulting and HR right from their day one at their job?
Right, very short advice. Work like it's your own company.
Sir, I'm really grateful for this interaction, and I appreciate your valuable perspectives, and thank you for giving us time.
Thank you so much, Nikhil. It was lovely interacting.